Hi, I'm Rosco and welcome back to EV Marketplace. I was going to say everything electric because tonight I've got a very special guest, CEO Dan Caesar from Everything Electric. He's coming up very shortly. I'm not sure what part of the world he is, but hey, look, he's joining us live very shortly. He's waiting in the green room right now, so we're going to get to him shortly. But if you're watching live on YouTube or you're watching live on Facebook, thanks for joining us because, of course, if it's 6:30 on Wednesday night, it's got to be EV night. I think Ludicrous Feed might be back next week. I saw Tom in China last week as well, so hopefully he's back to round out the night. But hey, there's plenty of coverage of the China Auto Show. Dan's just been there as well. He was there for the weekend for a fleeting visit. And of course, we're looking forward to Everything Electric later in the year now, and he's going to give us an update on that, how they're tracking. But can't wait to catch up on all that, plus the UK market as well, both new and used. Exciting things happening over there. We're trying to see what the parallels are between the markets, Australia and UK. Interesting to see where they're at, what sort of cars they've got, and whether we're coming together or whether we're going apart. But of course, tonight is brought to you by AmazingEV, our very own dedicated EV marketplace. And we just can't get cars at the moment. There's just no stock. So in fact, we've had more calls from people trying to help buy cars and looking for cars, looking for the right EV than we have selling at the moment. Still getting good prices for them. In fact, some of the prices are quite extraordinary for some Teslas at the moment. But if you want to list, there's a free coupon in the description down below. Amazing EV, free to list at the moment. We'll do whatever we can to help you if you've got one of those outliers, but not much in that 20 to 40K range, the sweet spot. There's a few higher and there's a few lower at the moment, but certainly a lot going through, and it's just as hot the market at the moment. Plenty of new cars around as well, looking like they're good deals as well. So we're keeping an eye on those for you as well. But hey, let's get straight into it. Let's not muck around. Let's hit the intro. Hey, Dan, good to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, it's great to be here. How are you?
Good, buddy. Good. Where are you? That's the main.
I'm just back in the UK after a whistle-stop tour to Beijing,
And how was
I'm
it?
off to Oslo next. Yeah, it was amazing. It
Yeah.
was. I mean, there's loads of coverage now, right? The world has
Yeah.
woken up to the fact that something really, really significant is going on in China. And so, I don't know, whatever platform you're on is awash now with
Yeah.
walkarounds from the Beijing show, with coverage. So we went to the Shanghai show last year as well. That was the first one I'd been to. But we've been
Yeah.
covering China for in depth for about 7 years now. Many other people have been doing it way before us. But
Yeah.
obviously, for those in the know, what we're seeing now is just the consequences of years of planning,
Yeah.
and the intensity and the competition on display now is
Yeah.
just extraordinary. So I met up with an American journalist, and I said to him, I bet you wish you could just download this show into the brains of the American populace right now, because they're still trying to put their heads in the sand. But
Yeah.
what is happening is nothing short of extraordinary. And just little things like, without wishing to go on, just the ability now to charge within 6 minutes,
Yeah.
which will surely move down to 5 minutes and
Extraordinary.
4 minutes. Cars that can do hundreds of miles of range, and we're only still in the foothills of the battery
Yeah.
chemistry war. So it's quite hard, maybe if you're outside the industry, to really sort of map forward where it's going to go. But actually, by 2030, 2035, the technology will be so good that
Yeah.
it would really take someone really quite stubborn to say, "Oh, hang on, this isn't for me now." So amazing show, and yeah, I could talk about it for a long time. But
Oh yeah, well we'll keep going for a bit. I don't know how long you've got, but we'll keep you as long as we can tonight. We've got a few in already. Joe's watching. Stan's back from China. He missed the show. Stan from Kangaroo Island. Welcome back, Stan. He was there recently and care of Zika. Joe's here. We've got a few in tonight. So any questions you've got for Dan, by all means, ship them through. But yeah, you touched on it already. One of my thoughts was that surely the Americans are seeing an even further divide, and you're seeing an even further divide between America and China. This gap's only getting bigger, right?
Yeah, it's a yawning chasm, and the reality is that how does it get pulled back together,
Yeah.
and over what time frame? You'd have to say that they're probably set the American market to be as it is for another 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And if political situation changes there, perhaps the market will swing back again. But yeah, the irony is we saw loads of SUVs and big pickups, all sorts of things that Americans love, and I know a few Australians love too. I think the used EV market in America is going okay, but there's not much choice in the new market compared to Australia, compared to the UK,
Yeah.
compared to Europe.
Oh,
It
oh,
is if you don't travel and you don't see this stuff, you don't go to Beijing, or as I say, I'm going to Oslo next week to see how many EVs are on the road there. If you don't see it, it's quite easy for it to be out of mind. But the reality is that the world has changed, and
exactly.
we just have to accept that and adapt.
I know, and I haven't Onslow reached about 98% anyway. Are you just going over there? Are you going over there to convince the other 2% to switch over as well?
Well, there's a Nordic EV summit that they hold just outside of Oslo every year. So I'm going to that and moderating on some panels. But Norway is that's quite a European event, because actually Europe is in different stages of advancement. So Sweden and Denmark are doing very, very well, as is Iceland. The Netherlands sort of hot on their heels. UK and Germany are moving pretty fast. But actually, to get up to Norway levels of adoption in the rest of Europe will take a little while.
That's
and
phenomenal.
So I think their best practice events really to show how it's done, learnings, and what can we do differently. So I'm looking forward to that trip, and then we've got our own first UK event next year. Next weekend. So actually, the event season has started in earnest now.
Yeah. It must be getting close to summer. I don't like talking about the weather on this channel, but it must be getting close to summer if that's the case. If you're free and you're not doing anything on the 6th and 7th, Dan will be at Onslow speaking at the Nova Spectrum event if you want something. He will be there talking, but
it's spring here now, and the sun's out. It's one time I can talk to Australia and not feel too jealous.
I was speaking to someone from the UK last week, and they said it's probably warmer here in Sydney. We've had a glorious autumn, but let's move back to China. Yeah, I just thought, again, some of the trends, again, from just looking at the American market compared to the Chinese market, the YouTubers must go there. The big news agencies are going over there. Yeah, it's pretty common knowledge now, and the message is being passed back. If it's not filtering through, they're just, I mean, Canada's got the message. Yeah, how long before the Americans get the message, right?
I saw lots of American YouTube colleagues over in the show, and no wall is impervious. This information leaks into America, and actually, over the years of running Fully Charged, so everything electric, we've seen our kind of American audience dwindle a little bit on the YouTube channel, because what's the point of them looking at car after car after car that they can't get, right? So I feel for them, and there are many very, very sensible Americans who drive EV, want an EV, aren't listening to kind of all the BS that's about them. But it must be really, really weird, and China, as I say, is dragging some of the other countries and other automotive organizations kicking and screaming into the future.
And that's the biggest, isn't it? That new exhibition centre in Beijing, that the enormity of that this time, watching again, I'm happy to chat a bit about it, because the enormity of that, looking at it on YouTube, just seemed almost overwhelming this time. Last year looked big, but this just looks incredible, just almost overwhelming.
I hadn't really appreciated, because you're just busy, and we sort of got on the flight and started prepping for the walk around. Shanghai was absolutely huge last year, and for Beijing to be quite a lot bigger, and actually, unfortunately for our feet and our knees, all getting a bit older, the halls are a bit further apart at Beijing as well. So there was a lot of steps covered, but it's just enormous. I mean, it does beg another question, which is how long can all these Chinese brands coexist? And the reality is that they can't in the long term. There's too much competition for consumer demand, and I don't just mean about EVs, just mean about cars in general.
Exactly.
So we are going to see a consolidation, but I think China's strategic plan, which has been laid out in public every 5 years for 25 years or so now, actually accounted for that. It wanted to launch an armada of EV companies, knowing one would break through the blockade in Australia, in the UK, in Europe, in North America, etc. So it is a clever strategy. The competition is driving each company. So whether it's CATL making their batteries better, BYD doing the same, Zeekr increasing the speed of their charging, whoever it is, they're all actually propelling each other forward. And some of the European companies are coming along in tow, right, effectively.
That's good, and I want to get to that because we're obviously getting a lot of the Chinese brands here, which you've seen, and it's barely started in the UK. There's a couple, but yeah, they haven't even got started in the UK really. So let's come back to that again, because I just wanted to go back for maybe people that don't know you. How did you get into this? What was your EV aha moment? I like to ask.
Yeah, good question. I mean, I've been promoting renewable energy since 2005. So I was in the kind of energy industry, really sort of fell in love with, sounds sad, but solar panels and heat pumps and batteries, and was promoting all that sort of stuff. And I had a very nice Audi TT at one point, and my client said, well, you can't be driving an Audi TT, you need to get an EV. So 2015, I made that leap. And then I met Robert Llewellyn, founder of the Charge Show. Fell in with him, and we've been on an incredible journey growing the YouTube channels. We've got 3 channels now, growing the podcasts, growing the events around the world. So it's been amazing. But yeah, I got my first EV in 2015. It was a spreadsheet that swung it. I was pretty convinced, but tell it to the wife. I actually said, I think it's going to be the cost savings in terms of fuel. We got a lovely little BMW i3, which I still think is a phenomenal car. And yeah, there was no turning back then. And just being an EV driver who understood the complexities gave me, well, it really helped my career, if I'm completely honest. So get an EV, help your own career. That's my advice.
I know, because it's taken some conviction, it's taken some courage, it's taken some pure guts to fight, for as long as you've been fighting. I can understand, sometimes how the frustrations filter through, but I'm a relative newbie, but we're just trying to work out here whether it's a spike, and I've just done a bit of work on asking a few people whether it's been a spike or whether it is a tipping point. And Mrs. Amazing, actually, my wife suggested maybe it might be just it's a talking point, but if nothing else, we need more talking points. And if it doesn't last, it's put a massive injection back into the whole market here in Australia as well, which is fantastic overall. So let's see, and we're well, as I say, we'll get to that. We're well behind the UK in terms of new car penetration, really, and used car. So coming back to that, but yeah, I guess meeting Robert, and then just curious, how did you convince yourself? How did you come up with the idea for the shows, the big shows, when it started? I remember ICC Sydney, 4 years ago now. So
2 years ago, I think. Yeah, well, I ran other events, and I'd run quite a lot of events before. I ran something called the Renewables Roadshow. My T-shirt here is homage to something I used to do called Accelerating Clean Technologies. So you can guess what that was about. So I've been running events in the space. When I met Robert, actually, my words were, I think we can grow the channel because it's running at a loss. He was putting his own money into it. God bless him. And I said, reluctantly, I think events are the way forward because I can monetize that. I'd kind of I don't want to run events ever again, but let's do it. And now 22 events globally later, you see a man quite tired, but it's been amazing. We've run about 150,000 test drives. We've promoted all sorts of different clean technologies as well. But actually, one of the key moments was probably doing Austin in 2020. We did some UK events. They went down really, really well.
Yeah.
So I think we can do this elsewhere. We did Austin. That was well attended.
Austin, Texas.
And then COVID came along, and that interrupted our flow for a little while. But we knew that actually our second biggest city for viewing was Sydney, and we knew our third biggest was Melbourne, and our fourth biggest was Brisbane globally. So we were like, actually, we definitely should take this format down under, and we have loved doing that. It's been a real pleasure for us to do that. So
you follow the YouTube traffic to help guide you with some of the shows as well.
We did, we did. I mean, we had a big audience in America. Austin was quite a surprise, I think, when we announced we were going to do Austin. We did have audience in Texas, but it certainly was nowhere near the sort of top 20 cities in the world for us. So it's a bit counterintuitive, but we wanted somewhere a bit more central that felt like a weekend destination. And actually, there's a huge amount of wind power, in particular in Texas, and a lot of Teslas being driven around Austin back in 2020. So it was good. It was a good meeting point. But ultimately we then started to go, well, where's our next biggest audience after London? And it was Sydney. So when we did that event, but that seems like quite a few years ago now. Quite a lot.
I was going to say, and that is amazing. And because Austin's a bit of an outlier as far as the rest of Texas, isn't it? But it
Yes.
would be the perfect spot, and it would still be ideally the perfect spot for a Tesla driver in the US. Another go, but hey, look, yeah, let's talk about Sydney though, because look, we're very excited you're coming back, and I know it's only we're counting the days, 6 months now, but yeah, disappointing in terms of the news, and I guess the timing worked out in one way or another that when we got the news, and I say disappointed because yeah, for me it was a central focus for the year. And with Melbourne last year provided two central foci, I guess we really, for people to come together, look around the room when it was still pretty, well, it was tough going for a few months last year, still and earlier this year before everything got so
Yeah.
exciting. But just to look around the room, see so many people that looked like you, smiled, felt the same as you,
Yeah.
were in the zone, in the mood. And that provided a real focus as far as I'm concerned, apart from all the cars and the drives and getting people behind the wheel, the next step. But just to see that there were so many people just like us in one place, I guess that must keep you excited about the whole process as well. But looking forward to coming back to Sydney as well. But what do you got in between then and now?
Yeah, well, the events re-energize us because it's a chance to actually connect with the audience. Because
Yeah,
actually, the YouTube business is brilliant, but it's sort of quite abstract. You're
yeah,
doing loads of stuff. Don't spend tons of time in the comments. I've learned that
yeah.
over the years. So the events re-energize us. We're really looking forward to come back to Sydney. Before that, we've got a show in the north of England, a show in the west of England for the first time. And just before we do Sydney, we've got a show in Greater London as well at Twickenham Rugby Stadium, a place where Australia regularly beats us.
Yeah.
And then they come over to Sydney for that show, and I'll be going to a few other shows of other people's in the meantime, including Goodwood. So yeah, it's a really busy time of the year. It was a very difficult decision to kind of defer the Sydney show back from March to September. Ironically, the weekend we were due to fly over was the weekend that the conflict started in Iran, so we couldn't have flown across Dubai in the Middle East anyway. How bizarre is that? But the primary reason we deferred it was actually at that point the market was a little bit flat, and it kind of swung a little bit towards FEVs.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing now is the result of the president of the USA invading Iran. So we're seeing, whether it's a spike or a tipping point, we're seeing he's actually pushed a lot of people towards battery EV.
Yeah.
But previous to that, his pulling down of all Biden's policies in the US, actually, and a lot of the car makers in the US started to move back towards FEVs.
Yeah.
That before that start to infect the Canadian market, because we have a show in Vancouver as well. We saw it start to spread across the world. So a lot of the car makers were actually launching FEVs in the first quarter of this year. In fact, I saw you in February when I was down in Sydney, and I'd just come out of the big car makers. They said, actually, we're not launching any BEVs until the autumn. We're launching them. We're launching FEVs at the moment. So it's amazing. Car companies are herd animals. They kind of follow the political sentiment, and there's always a lag between what's going on and the reality. So the oil price spikes is going to see, I think, a lot more people front foot with BEV again come the autumn, because there's a gap. So it looks like we were sort of lucky in one respect. We made a difficult decision, but we're coming back in September, and we're really looking forward to it. And I think actually timing will be good. And actually quite a few people said to us, actually, for your show, September's actually a better month. So anyway,
exactly.
It is, be lucky in life is one of the key things. If you can be.
I know. Who is to know? And we hope. And is Robert coming back for that one? Does he plan that in?
That's the plan. We're just trying to work that through at the moment. Robert's celebrated a significant birthday in the last month or so. So we're trying to sort of wrap him in a bit of cotton wool. But he has a huge love for Australia, for Sydney. His mother-in-law's from Brisbane. You may know that. So we hope he'll be part of the group that comes out in September. But we're still working through the details of that. But I'll be back for a flying visit in July to Sydney, and pretty much, I love it. So I don't need much.
I know. Exactly. Even in winter here. And I hope Jack's back as well. Tell Jack to come back again. He seems to have burdened Robert with an enormous amount of work. There's been about 10 new launches in Europe in the last month. Robert's had to step up again.
Well, if I can, I mean, Jack is a phenomenal presenter, lovely guy, and he's been brilliant for the channel over the last 5 or 6 years. But he's on a bit of a sabbatical.
Yeah.
He's of an age where I don't want to speak for him, but maybe he's sort of leaning towards settling down at some point. And he said, actually, I felt like to go on a bit of a sabbatical. And with great jealousy, we said, yeah, you
Okay.
should.
All right.
Robert and Imogen and the others have all had to step into a whole number of shoots they wouldn't have ordinarily done. But
I know.
he's
Robert's at the commercial van show over the weekend.
He loves a van and he loves a truck and all the rest of it. So,
Yeah, I know. I do too. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I want to go back to hybrids because I just did you see a lot of E-revs? What was the vibe about E-revs and long range E-revs? I guess in China this time.
There were two big themes from this show, in my opinion. One was how many big cars there were.
Yeah.
We saw quite a lot of smaller cars in Shanghai.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of smaller cars.
Yeah. It's the essence of an EV, isn't it? Right. Really.
The world is definitely over the last 20, 25 years due to billions of marketing has moved towards bigger cars, SUVs, etc. And I know from driving on Australia's roads, Australia's not been immune to that. In fact, they've got some, hulking great vehicles in Australia. You've got quite a lot of space there, so I understand it. Europe's a bit different, smaller roads, etc., etc. So that big vehicle theme was really preeminent at this year's show, and Elliot and I speculated that was car companies sort of being conservative rather than taking a risk on pushing smaller cars. They were kind of the SUV is their sort of sweet spot.
Yeah.
So we saw loads of big SUVs, loads of big people carriers, loads of pickups, etc., etc. So that was one of the themes. The other theme was E-rev.
Yeah.
And I'm actually less anti that than you might think, but I don't think it has a long-term future.
No.
Because I think ultimately you're carrying around two powertrains. There's additional cost, less, etc. But I think if it gets a few more people into EV over the next 10 years, then that's not necessarily the end of the world. And I'd rather they were driving an EV that maybe had 100 miles electric range than 40.
Yeah, exactly.
And ultimately, I think as chemistries get better, ranges get better, that will answer all the questions. But you live in a big country, right? Yeah. Actually, the average mileage Australian drives is lower than a Brit, actually. But for those times where you want to head out, you might want some comfort. So we're a little bit less E-rev than you might anticipate, but also it fundamentally is the battery driving the wheels, so it is it is a subtle different technology. So quite a lot of E-rev technology out there, but ultimately the likes of CATL and BYD and Zeekr wouldn't be spending the money they're spending on battery development, charging development, if they weren't absolutely, desperate to make sure that it's battery EV that wins out in the medium to long term. It is going to be for them. They've built their whole supply chain around the battery. And it's then going to be the most economical option in the long term. But haven't the Chinese been adaptable in terms of producing hybrids? I mean, I think there was a bit of a naivete from Europe thinking actually that China would just try and push EVs and that would be it. But actually, they will soak up market share any which way they can.
Exactly.
And you'd have to say it's quite smart.
And that's exactly what we're seeing here, as you well know. They're putting cars into whatever niche straight away that happens to work or can make money and establish market share. And EVs are a nice dream to have, and maybe that was the go. But they're happy to fill it with hybrids. They're happy to fill it with utes. They're happy to fill it with whatever they can to establish market share. And just extraordinary. And I guess, have you started to see that in the UK? Is that starting to be a talking point? Because sometimes we're envious of some of the cars, the Renault 5s, Twingos that you get over there. They're never going to come here. There's no way they'll come to Australia.
Yeah, I mean, it is different here. Like the plug-in hybrid sales have been okay. Battery EV sales are good. Battery EV sales are much bigger than plug-in hybrid sales here in the UK. There's been a bit of growth in plug-in hybrids.
I got that one up here.
But the reality is it's a much smaller country.
Yeah.
So actually, there are people, and I do it occasionally, who drive into Europe, but actually it's not
Yeah.
commonplace. And most people will, even if they go on a long journey to
Mm.
Scotland from the south or to Wales from the east or wherever, they can do that in a battery EV. So the EREVs will sell here in the UK, but I think
Yeah.
particularly for Canada, Australia, America,
Yeah.
EREVs are going to sell well, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've got some great cars here. Renault 5, I've been driving one of those recently.
Yeah.
Great car.
And
Great
so, yeah,
car. Really,
I mean,
really good price.
BYD, MG were there in the UK, and we're just going to start to switch to the UK and just focus on what's going on there, both new and used, because that's where we started talking. That was my original fascination. But the China story feeds straight in. BYD must be starting to load up big time, yeah.
Yeah, they're doing very, very well. I think a couple of months ago in Australia, you had 6 out of the top 10 best-selling battery EVs were BYD. They've not made quite that impact, but they're doing very, very well from a volume perspective. UK market traditionally leans quite heavily towards the German car makers.
Yeah.
And we're seeing BYD make big inroads, but as is Chery with the Motor JQ. There's a lot of those on the road here as well.
Yeah. Is that a
For
hybrid?
good or
Is that J7 a hybrid? We've got the J5.
JQ7 is a hybrid.
Yeah.
That was actually, you may have this on slide, that's actually the best-selling car
Yeah.
full stop in the UK last month.
I've got that one. Yeah.
But they've got the so that's all cars.
Yeah.
So
that, yeah.
That's extraordinary. The Ford Puma has an all-electric range, which is selling well as well. The Qashqai doesn't. The Sportage doesn't. The Corsa it'll be a mix of different fuel types. The MG HS, for example, is a plug-in hybrid.
Yeah.
Model Y breaks the top 10 as is common. But the reality is that a Motor JQ are hitting the market, trying to meet the market where it is, and so for them, some fares are going quite well, and also conspicuously, Jaguar Land Rover hasn't really come to the party with electric Range Rover yet. It's been delayed for a long time, and not for everyone, because there is a difference between the finish and the expectation for a Range Rover versus a JQ, for example. But for some people, they're like, actually, I quite look at that JQ5. It actually is giving off some Range Rover vibes, and actually I'll buy that. So
it's going to do well.
At
the price, at 36 grand in Australian. I don't know what's that in pounds. That's 20,000. That's less than 20,000.
Well, I don't. Very sensitive subjects that my friends at car companies don't like me to bring up, but we'd be paying probably similar in pounds to what you pay in dollars.
Yeah.
So our cars are often, and I don't know if most Australians are aware of this now, our cars are normally 40, 50, 60, 70% more expensive here than they are for you in Australia. So everything's very expensive in Britain. If Australians think they've got a cost of living crisis, affordability crisis, come and spend a month in Britain, you'll be cured.
My case study along the line was the MG4. You were paying in pounds what we've been paying in dollars for quite some time for that original MG4. And then the other stories I get about the public charging rates. You're paying in pence what we're paying in cents at the public charges as well. So
it's eye-watering. If you've got a driveway right now, it's a no-brainer in the UK. If you haven't, it's still probably comparable. But the advantage that you can run an EV more cheaply if you don't have a driveway, it doesn't really exist in the same way. So it is. But I could buy some groceries in the UK. I could buy clothes. Everything here is inordinately expensive. I've been told not to mention Brexit too often, but the UK has become just an eye-watering expensive place to live.
Have you got a podcast bingo card that you're not allowed to say?
No. Robert and I, we keep each other in check. We're allowed to have the odd go at the politicians.
I think you broke all the rules in one that you had with Robert about 2 months ago, where you just
we hadn't seen each other for 2.5 months, 3 months because he'd been in Australia. And then we just had a big rant together. Yeah, that's right.
That list at the top 10 of UK cars versus the Australian one, it couldn't be more different in the way they deviated between the small compact hatch, and most people who follow the channel and watching know these cars. And maybe the Australian one never looked like that. but we had a few sprinklings in there. How different it is compared, we've got 6 or 7 utes in the top 10, and you've got, yeah, those small little compact cars. I guess in my mind, those sorts of cars are the easier ones to replicate as smallish EVs versus the utes. But the utes and the vans are coming here. There'll be no excuse soon. They'll have them here, and they'll be reasonably priced, and they'll do the job that a tradesman needs around the city, and they'll look cool, and we'll be stuck with them for a while. It's lots of people are disappointed about the size of them on the road and trying to park them and maneuver them, and just the sheer waste of metal. But yeah, that may or may not last. I think we've reached peak ute in Australia. Again, just as all the new entrants are coming in, we've probably got 15 or 20 different models now. I think we may have reached peak ute, but remains to be seen. But you don't have to deal with that. You don't have to deal with that, luckily.
There were lots in Beijing.
Yeah.
So, I think we all know that the market is going to start to change as well.
And then if you see that, you might see them in Europe, but yeah, we'll see them in here, and they'll come here. I was also interested in this one in the whole UK market to set the scene before we sort of halfway through the story, that you appear to have reached peak car. This is new car registrations for the last 10 years, and sure, COVID, 15 years COVID, yeah, really killed it big time. But looks like you reached peak car in 17, and sort of only just sort of recovering now, which is not a bad thing in the whole scheme of things, but. Luckily, EV petrol sales are down, and they're not really down in Australia. They're not down as much as they should be, even though EV sales are up. Petrol sales aren't down enough yet at the moment versus the UK. So it's encouraging to see as you say, the hybrids, EREVs, and the EVs increasing on this chart here. It's encouraging to see them increase to that level.
Yeah, there's a genuine, general acceptance, in people's minds that an EV or a hybrid equates to more efficient running costs. And so, yeah, the pure petrols, pure diesels, and I'm afraid I do have to count mild hybrids as pure petrols, but they're lumped in a separate category. But there's a definite direction of travel. And on the previous graph, we just don't buy as many cars in the UK new anymore. There's a whole range of reasons for that. And obviously, if you look at 2020 and you see COVID as a potential reason, but actually you go back to 18, 19 on that chart, actually what was happening then is the UK was leaving the European Union.
Yeah. Okay,
so fortunately for the Brexiteers, COVID then kind of like obliterated that story. But yeah, the market hasn't really recovered. And, I think particularly for young people now, buying a car is... Well, buying a house, buying a car, buying anything is significantly more challenging. So I think we are well past peak car volumes. And at least some of the cheaper cars entering the market are starting to offer some hope to people that they can get a car. That said, I'm a big believer in public transport and all those things, but they are also incredibly expensive. And the convenience of a car is pretty unbeatable, right? So it is interesting. And I was talking to Turo yesterday. There's some car sharing stuff that goes on. Obviously, there's a Waymo is starting in London imminently. So there are other ways of getting around in a car, maybe that's changing the ownership model. But yeah, new car sales is a tough road to hoe, and actually, company cars and people buying through their businesses is one of the key drivers in the UK market for new car sales.
And again, just before we move on a bit more to the used market in the UK, do you see that fight back in the UK or in China from the likes of BMW? Are they a worthy challenger, do you think, in the whole scheme of things?
I mean, that's a really great question. You're seeing these regional variations now.
Yeah.
I just don't think that the Germans are going to embrace Chinese cars in the same way that the British will, for example. There is a huge amount of national pride around BMW, Mercedes, Audi, VW, Porsche, etc. And understandably so. Those brands have huge resonance. They're making some fantastic cars, right? But even in Germany, new entrants will be cheaper. So the Chinese will erode German market share in Germany, but as a fortress goes, as a stronghold, Germany is the best market. I find it quite ironic to talk to some car companies from China a lot of them they've set up headquarters in Germany.
Yeah.
Well, actually, and they are absolutely wedded to the fact they need to grow share in Germany. I said,
Yeah.
actually, I think you've chosen the wrong market. I think if it hadn't been for Brexit, someone might have chosen the UK.
Yeah.
But the UK basically cut itself away from Europe. There's quite a few Chinese car companies in the Netherlands as well, which I think is a better base into Scandinavia, into Germany, into France, etc. But a lot of Chinese companies are going after the German market. Now, I like the look of the new Denza sports cars that are coming. But will a German consumer part with his money for one of those over a BMW? I'm not so sure. But in the UK, we have much less loyalty to German car makers.
Yeah.
We have always been known as a nation that loves German cars, and we still do. But if someone offers us something half decent that is cheaper, given the cost of crisis and etc., you can see why some of the Chinese brands are going to soak up bigger share in the UK. So a lot of respect for the German cars, but fundamentally, they're still going to be very expensive. What is interesting is to see the Germans in particular pair up with the Chinese manufacturers.
And that's right. Can those relationships that they built in China for joint ventures to build in China, where the Chinese learnt everything and learnt the quality benchmarks, will they be replicated back in their own home country again? That'll be the question.
Well, at Shanghai last year, one of the launches was the Audi Sportback. So Audi have the Four Rings brand that we know so over many years. They now have the four-letter mark, which is AUDI, very obviously, and they launched a new Sportback car, and it's sold quite well for the first month or two, but it's sold really, really poorly since. And if you look at it objectively, I visited the stand again. Audi's stand was much smaller in Beijing than it was in Shanghai last year. But if you look objectively at Sportback, and they just brought out an SUV equivalent, it looks like a European car.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I would buy it. I can't because it's not available in the UK. But it looks like a European car. And the Chinese are prioritizing their own brands, of which there are many.
It's an expensive route to go down because different models, different niche models, different markets, multiple options, multiple different styles, accessories, and yet the Chinese tend to standardize. But we won't get too much into it. But they're standardized the packs, standardized the offerings, and they're just a hell of a lot more cheaper for what you get. And so it brings in the whole question for another day that the value of the premium brand anymore. Was it based around the engine? Porsche are going to have the same problem, but we won't dig too deep into that because we'll never get out again.
There was a couple of quite significant moments at the Beijing show, which I think your audience might find interesting. One was there was a senior, I think, top, very, very high level executive from VW on the Xpeng stand, and there was a huge crowd that gathered.
Yeah,
and they were in very public courtship, right, on the Xpeng stand, which I thought was interesting because how can the Germans or any other legacy automakers afford to ignore these companies now? There was also a moment where, one guy walked around the show flanked by about 100 different people. Like, who is that? And it was the CEO of Xiaomi, tech company that is also making huge inroads now and is bringing their cars to Europe.
Yeah.
And he was dressed not like a car exec, because you can tell the European car execs in my loft, they all look extremely but he was just looked like a tech dude. He was walking around the show, 100 people around him. And you're just seeing this extraordinary changing of the guard in real time. So, I've never wanted any car companies to fail, but it just seems to me there's only this music chairs, right? And there's only so many chairs. And the music will, once this whole EV phase has gone on over the next 5-10 years, the music's going to stop and people are going to be in new brands that they were in before often because... And then loyalty might crystallize and harden again around certain brands. People might say, I've got my second Xiaomi, I'm not going to change from that now.
No.
But at the moment, it's all up for grabs. It must be terrifying if you're leading a legacy automaker.
And there was a place for small compact cars here in Australia and cheap cars. And if you edged up in the market and you edged up into a more premium segment and took your quality up a level, if you're a Korean or Japanese manufacturer, then there's a Chinese brand to come and fill it. And Chery's done that here. MG did it for a few years. Chery's doing it now. It's a basic petrol car. I want a car for 25 grand. Okay, fine. You go and buy the 25 grand car. Again, we've got one question. I'll move on about legislation in the UK. And I did find a bit of an article because I wanted to touch on that. We're coming across the same sorts of questions here as well. change to FBT potentially, which hopefully won't happen, but change potential road tax for EVs, or road user tax for EVs. Where's it ended up in the UK at the moment? Can you figure it out?
Well, it is, as it will be, I'm sure, in Australia. There are, as a government, but a government isn't one monolithic block. They have
Yeah.
different departments, different opinions, different agenda. And so what we're seeing in the UK is actually the Department for Transport is being very pro-EV. There's a new grant now. They're actually doing some advertising promotion of EVs. They're trying to keep the zero emission vehicle mandate broadly the same, although there's lots of pressure on them from the likes of Toyota to kind of dilute it further. But at the same time, the Treasury, the people who ultimately hold the purse strings, are very worried about the fuel revenues. And mooted that there will be a paper mile tax from 2028. Now, not only did they not need to say that in 2026, but it runs counter to everything that's going on. The government's pouring money into promoting EVs, but then actually that put the brakes on for some people. I wish I could speak to everyone and say that ultimately paper mile will come in probably in every single country, irrespective of fuel types. It is just going to come in as a way to better manage revenues. But ultimately, I can say this, in the UK, EVs are still much cheaper. In Australia, much cheaper still. So, but obviously it's a bad news story, right? Any bad news story doesn't help. And it was just like one of those kind of, shoot yourself in the foot moments from the government. You're like, well, what are you doing? You guys clearly don't talk. I think it is frustrating.
Frustrating is the word. But we've had the same situation here where the rumours might go out, as you've probably heard, that they're looking at getting rid of the FBT concession on EVs because the market has done. Or they've raised more money than they expected because 47% or 48% of new EVs were sold under that scheme, and so it is a success. But the other part of government, those mandated with promoting EVs, are only looking at the number and going, we're only doing 7, 8, 9% per month. But the Treasury, who's collecting the money, says, well, this is a wild success, so we've got to cut it back. Same sort of corollary here. I think, they've realised that although we've had a great boom in EVs, and we'll get to that shortly, for March and April, extraordinary boom to take us up to new levels. It's not a complete change in dynamic, and it's certainly not the complete tipping point that we've talked about. It's still going to need some push forward, and it's not. If they start putting the brake levers on somewhere else, very strange, isn't it? Very strange times.
I mean, Norway continues to support through policy EV adoption even now. It is going to be a process that's always going to need some push, but fossil fuels have been subsidised in some form or other forever and a day.
Yes.
Subsidy is just the way the world works, the way government works. I would argue subsidising towards EV for the health benefits alone is a very, very worthwhile cause.
I agree.
You'll always get some whingers on the side, complaining about that and saying it's not fair. But there's never been a level playing field. It's always been stacked heavily in the favour of oil and gas until now. So, it is what it is, and we keep trying to make the case, and our kind of whole mantra really is cheaper, better battery electric. Let's keep repeating the cheaper thing and get people to realise that actually, EVs are better value. And some people during the price spike on petrol have started to realise that, but not everyone.
No, I know. And look, awareness has been incredible here. You've heard the stories, and you're probably getting them here. And I'm curious to see what's happened in the UK, because the new car market, just took off, and so they delivered it just about everything they probably had in stock, and the forward orders will be outstanding for May, June, July, I'm sure, taking us to closer to 15%. But well down on the UK in terms of outright penetration. On the used car side of things, the market's so small here, with only 3,000 or 4,000 cars selling a month out of 200 odd thousand, less than 1.5%. Yeah, for a sudden switch in mentality, and we think it was driven by the media. It was really a frenzy, and amazing how many people watch mainstream media, and the media that got on board so quickly, and the message
Yeah.
was out there, and everybody I talked to, you must be pleased that you own an EV, you must be happy you drive an EV, you must be smiling at the moment. More positive conversations in 3 months, in 3 weeks than I had in 3 years. And so I think it was driven hard, and the sensitivity was so short, so tight that it just pushed the used car market up. And we've had massive increases in the used car pricing. So, what are you seeing over there in terms of car pricing on the used side of things?
Yeah, used. It's sort of. I mean, used EVs are cheaper in the UK
Yeah,
by on average. Our figures last year were about £2,700 than a used ICE equivalent.
yeah,
So used EV sales. Lots of people have had their first EV for a while now. So there's lots of used EVs coming
yeah,
into the market. The penetration is about 5% before the kind of oil spike of the market.
yeah,
Yeah, so it's about 80% of car sales in the UK are used as
yeah.
opposed to new.
That's huge. Yeah,
They are moving much more quickly off the lot
yeah,
than the used ICE cars. We will not really get an accurate picture. It's quite opaque here of what's going on in the used market for EVs as a result of the oil crisis for a quarter.
yeah,
But certainly, the anecdotal stuff is very positive. I think Australia's had the most steep growth of
yeah,
anywhere because I think it's so far from everywhere else. It's not just about the cost of everything; it's about fuel dependency as
yeah,
well. Uh, so the UK has definitely seen some uplift, new and used. The interest on EVs has spiked in terms of searches, etc., etc.
yeah,
But the used market's got. I mean, you can get some fantastic used EVs now, and that's
yeah,
where I would advise any of my friends and family to
yeah.
uh, head to. It's really kind of interesting. But I think in Q1 2026, so before the price spike, effectively, you're looking at about I think it's about 120,000 new EVs sold and
Mm.
about 80,000 used EVs sold. And also, there's a point at which maybe, and this is not an original thought from me, a guy called Zach Shahan, who runs Clean Technical website, wrote a
Mm.
piece about this last day or so. Maybe to an extent, the used market now it exists is kind of undermining the new market
Mm.
because people are actually I'll get a why would I pay for one it's going to drop value off the forecourt? Why don't I actually get a used one? So
Yeah,
the cumulative growth is very, very significant. So the used EV market is healthy and growing very fast. And we've had some of the furor, some of the media excitement that you've had, but not quite to the same extent, I think. But it will play out over the next quarter. We will see, I think, pretty good figures for Q2, Q3.
yeah. I think
Typically,
we're tracking it. Yeah, we're tracking it monthly here through AutoGrab, and they release some preliminary inter-month numbers, and yeah,
yeah.
just incredible that the summary for March, and it's blowing out basically the stock that was available. There's still cars available in that higher price range and some of the lower price range as well, but in that sweet spot. Do you think the market in the UK for used EVs is driven because the new ones are so expensive?
I mean that's it's just a nation that 4 out of 5 cars sold are used, right? There has been a bit of a depreciation issue in the UK, which I'm sure you've seen in Australia as well. Whereas I think quite a lot of the initial EVs were sort of overpriced, so there has been a correction.
Hmm.
So the Porsche Taycan is obviously one that
Yeah.
we mention on a regular basis. You know,
Oh, it's the
um,
poster child for depreciate. It's the poster child for depreciation.
and the reality is that the actual percentage of people that buy a car like that outright is very, very small,
Hmm.
and they are actually probably people who are really quite wealthy. And it doesn't really matter. The average person is not buying a car that way in the UK. They're buying a used car, or if they're buying a new car, they're getting it
Yeah.
through some sort of finance. So but what I think happened was quite a few of the car companies sort of cynically priced their EVs higher than their ICE cars as a sort of deterrent, I think, in a way. Clearly, they are trying to understand the economics of it, and it is harder maybe for a company that's been built around engines to create EVs as profitably as they've been creating ICE because
Yeah.
they haven't scale yet. But at the same time, that's just found a balance. We're not going to see more depreciation in the EV
No.
sector. It's just gone down. It's hit the natural level relative to demand. So
Yeah.
I think the used EV market is like there are just so many great,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
and I'm like regularly on the used EVs. I was going, oh, I could get this for that, and it is pretty exciting. But I think I'm into cars. I dare say you are as well. The bulk of people aren't, right? They're not really. They're just a matter of getting from A
I know.
to Z. And the car
It's
industry has we look through the lens of the people who love cars, but actually
yeah,
probably a huge percentage of people just want something to get around in.
yeah.
I mean, there's some pretty ugly, ordinary looking cars that selling huge volumes.
I know.
Who like, has got the kind of face that only a mother would love. You're like, who's buying that? But actually, people just don't care.
I
They
know,
just want a
and
good
there's a few Chinese ones that fall into that category here, but no one cares if it's a fridge on wheels. It does not matter because as long as it cools things and drives and goes and comes home. If it's 35 grand, it doesn't matter if it's a fridge on wheels. And I find that interesting about the market in the UK. I've just got a bit of noise in the background, but I'll keep talking. Here we're getting that full competition of new EVs, and the market's getting more and more intense. A lot of the manufacturers and OEMs did not react to the increased demand by putting prices up, apart from a couple of exceptions, strange ones. So we had this strange corollary where used EV prices were going up and the new market and the new offerings were getting cheaper and cheaper as the competition increased. So very interesting, and I did a bit of work with Riz a couple of weeks ago on this to have a chat about this, because strange situation where the competition around the 35 grand mark for a new SUV like the JQ J5 and the Tesla Model 3 and Model Y going up $10,000 to $15,000. It was an extraordinary situation. So yeah, it's if you're an OEM, I wouldn't want to be working for a car manufacturer trying to work out what to do.
really hard, really hard. But it's this change is happening, right? And
Yeah,
the first thing to do is to accept it's happening, and then to
exactly.
accept the reality and deal with the reality.
Hmm.
What we're seeing from a few is that they're just still refusing to accept that this is the
Yeah,
norm for a while until the market settles down again in maybe 10, 15 years time. We've entered a new predominantly all electric market, and it will
exactly.
look so good, I think.
Yeah, I know. And we've got a few OEMs here who've still got their head in the sand. One in particular, starting with T, has got an extraordinary number of electric vehicles in the US market, right? And yet virtually none here. And so it's bizarre. And speaking of the US market, without staying on that, yeah, their used car market is doing extraordinarily well. Used EV market, almost half the number of new EVs were, and that after they
It's
knocked both.
one of the things that drives car sales, new car sales, is new cars, and by
Yeah,
the way, new models, right? There's a trend. Oh, this is a new
yeah,
car, and then that trend evaporates after 6 months to a
yeah,
year. Another new car comes in. In America, they haven't got that, so that creates a totally different balance where you
yeah,
would go used. I think you're like, well, nothing new's really coming in, so I can't drive a BYD in from China. Donald said, so
yeah,
I'm gonna just gonna go to the used market. So
yeah.
yeah, totally different, almost like false artificial dynamics playing out in America at the moment.
Exactly. Yeah. I know, and their prices are staying up even after the incentives have gone off the used cars. They had some pretty attractive incentives on the used cars over there as well, the used EVs, and they've gone. But yeah, the market's holding up really nicely over there. So it's a very strange world we live in. I can't wait. Hey Dan, thanks. I've kept you long enough. Let's have a plug for everything electric again. I want to make sure that everyone gets behind it again, because yeah, we loved it. We look forward to it, and can't wait to see you guys back down here again. I hope there'll be
Yeah,
more brands, more OEMs, and more EVs on display this time, and can't wait to see
yeah,
all you
no,
guys down here.
we're very confident in that respect. Sales are going really well, which is what it comes down to. Who's going to be on the floor?
Yeah.
It's September 18th to 20th at Sydney Showground. No, we can't wait to be back. As I say, we've been, I think, quite lucky. It was a difficult decision to defer it, but it's a great show. It's a great city. From our perspective, we cannot wait
Yeah.
to get down there again. And yeah, I mean, it is interesting how the market's sort of playing out. And this show, you can actually bring together the other parts, which I think are important. We haven't talked about, like the battery, solar, and the V2G, and working with the energy supplier, to have zero bills, and and how do you actually have an EV that maybe even pays you,
I know.
So I think bringing all those things together is quite interesting as well. So, yeah, from our perspective, it's thank you for having us on today, and I look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Thanks for joining me. I know we could talk V2G, we could talk fast charging, we could talk all the rest of the models from China, but we could go on all night. Thanks, Dan, and look forward to catching you next time. If I don't see you before, we'll see you in Sydney in September. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
That was Dan Caesar, and what a great privilege to have him on board tonight. Fantastic to chat to him, because so many insights from the UK, all the news from China and America. He's following it closely and been following markets around the world. UK is going in a slightly different path to Australia, probably a few years ahead of us, but I think the Chinese are on their way there. And can't wait to see what unfolds here on the used market in Australia as well. So that's all we've got for tonight. Thanks for joining me, and I'm Rosco, and we'll see you next week.